Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Project Future podcast. In this episode, I speak with an author and leadership and life coach, Sue Belton. After giving birth to her daughter, Sue realised she wanted something different from life and took redundancy from her successful media career. Sue saw value in a coaching session she received from Judy Rich and then went on to learn more about coaching and started her own business. Sue specialises in developing ambitious professionals to lead and live by design, not default, and works with both organisation-sponsored and private clients who want to step up and consciously design the next phase of their leadership and lives. Since 2008, hundreds of professionals have followed her unique method that combines the principles of neuroscience, mindfulness, and practical coaching techniques. Her book, Change Your Life in 5, was an instant sellout on Amazon. Sue lives in London with her teenage daughter, is an advocate of early morning routines, and an avid amateur birdwatcher. In this episode, Sue explains how she shifted her mindset from that of employee to entrepreneur, how she hustled for clients in a variety of scenarios, the key connections to make before starting your own business, reasons why you shouldn't set up a business, and how she's adjusted her offering since COVID. Sue's best advice is to get a complete handle on what your fears, limiting beliefs, and any self-belief issues are. Let's have a listen. Hi Sue, welcome to the show.
Hello.
It's great to have you here today, and of course you're a contributor to Project Future.
I am. That's my first book of the year. There you go.
It's many people's first book of the year, which is quite an exciting thing, including my publisher. So it's very much nice to be early in 2021, which hopefully is going to be a fabulous year. So I'd love for you to start by explaining a bit about your background and how you've got started in what you do.
Currently I'm a leadership and career coach, but my background was I was a TV producer for the BBC for 14 years. Loved it, made loads of documentaries in women's prisons, in strip clubs, in all sorts of weird and wonderful places. It was a fantastic career, and it was my dream career at the time. But when I had my daughter, everything changed for me. I know it's a cliche, but very long story short, I had a disastrous return to work. I had postnatal depression officially, lots of anxiety, OCD, terrible return to work, and then redundancies came along. And I always joke I was probably one of the first people. I might have been the first person to get on the phone and say I want it. And at that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew what I couldn't bear to do anymore. So that was the beginning of my journey, and I was lucky enough to have a session with a fantastic coach called Judy Rich, who's now a dear friend. And within that session, she took me from a place of absolute hopelessness, despair, and all the anxiety to a place of seeing actually having some hope, but also, and most importantly for me, seeing that what I could do about it, seeing the choices I did actually have moving forward. And that's what kicked it all off.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I think it can be so difficult sometimes to see the breadth of options that are out there, and also to kind of reflect on what it is that you have done and how some of that can be channeled to move forwards.
Yeah, Robert, and I think actually even more important that is to see that internally you have a choice. So we often think we're stuck and this is the way it is. And it's that internal shift that changes everything, that realizing that whatever goes on out there, especially now during these times, you always have a choice as to how you respond to it. That was the game changer for me.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I think the coaching industry now, as it were, has really developed over the last kind of decade or so, and the opportunities that the internet kind of offers to get visibility and all of that kind of great stuff. But how was it when you first started, and indeed how did you start to get those initial clients?
Well, it was a very, very different world. There wasn't Zoom, that's for a start. There
Yeah.
wasn't so much social media. I don't think there was Instagram, there was Facebook, and that was it really. So things have changed a lot and hugely. I mean, I think there's still a stigma around the word life coach. So I think there's still stigma around it. But now, and even back then, there were just a whole load of courses. Luckily, as a former journalist, I did massive due diligence. and found a very top quality one. But in terms of, I was an employee through and through, and I had massive fears about even going, I wouldn't even dare go freelance because I had this limiting belief that comes from my background, how I was raised, in terms of, you've got to have an income, you've got to have a stable income monthly coming in. So don't dare to step outside of that and branch out on your own. So I never had that entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
So for me, starting a business and going out and getting my own clients was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I completely empathize with you, and it's a huge mindset shift. And throughout my 20s, I never once considered starting a business. I studied business at university, and I didn't do anything entrepreneurial during that time. So it's absolutely the conditioning, the kind of the education side of things, and it can be a huge variation to, instead of looking for a job maybe once every 2, 3, 5, 10 years, to actually have to go out there and try and pitch yourself and promote yourself to clients on a much more regular basis than that, and not have that clarity of income, and what will be there in 6 months time, and all that kind of future planning that you can take place if you've got a set salary. So yeah,
Mm.
it's fascinating, isn't it? And it takes a big mental jump.
Not only that, but I coach and mentor new coaches going through their training. And being a coach is very different from being an entrepreneur. And you have to wear both hats. And this is what I see with a lot of new business owners, the lovely, gorgeous work that they want to do. They've also got to be an entrepreneur and look after the business of things. So I think it can be a real shock to a lot of people about what's actually involved and the mechanics of running a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I say certainly in my own case, it was a good 2 years before I felt comfortable as a business owner. And
Mm.
I think it can be longer than that, and for some people it never quite works. So how did things go? So you started, you got clarity that that was your field. So how did you progress from there?
I basically started hustling for clients while I was in my training. Classic me, I'm a real doer, bit of a workaholic, still working on that. But I started hustling for clients right from the beginning of my training. I made sure I got a great coach because I've always want to be the best, excellence, all of that kind of stuff is a high value of mine. And I started hustling for clients right from the beginning. When I say hustling, that really is tapping into my existing networks. I lived and breathed it. I picked up clients at bus stops, anywhere, any kind of situation. I was picking up clients, and I was doing that consciously, but also because I was massively passionate. I had this amazing new thing that was changing my life, and I wanted to share it. So I think you've got to have that, and it's got to be authentic and real, and you've got to really, I'll put it nicely, be passionate about what you're doing. So that's how I did it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And on that note, if you do have that passion for something, then that's going to attract the right type of customer as well, isn't it? It's going to attract the people that see you as the solution to the problem that they have. So I think it works on both sides, doesn't it? There's having that extra something to say, yes, I believe in what I'm looking to do, but then it's also making other people accept that, yeah, that this is the solution. So I think it works both ways.
Yeah, and not only the solution piece, but I always go up a level beyond that first. And it is the old cliche of, you've got to connect with your why. Why are you doing this? Why is this important? What does it mean to you? Because unless you get clear on that and on the vision and your values and what this is all about, you may as well just stay as an employee. I really believe that. Don't set up your own business unless you care deeply about the service or product you're offering. Just stay as an employee. Don't do it because it will be impossible, I think.
No, I agree. I think it's that's absolutely key. There has to be a reason behind it, and I think having that clarity before making the decision is so important, because otherwise it could be a lot of pain that follows if that hasn't been considered beforehand. So, who are your clients? Where do you who do you tend to work with?
Yeah, so look, I work with a personality type actually. So it's basically me as coaches, whether they know it or not, or even admit it or not, you tend to coach yourself. So I tend to coach people who are at midlife, so that mid 30s to mid 40s point, super successful, ambitious. They've achieved a load in their career, chosen career, but they're at that point where they want more. They want more meaning. They want more time and space. Um, Often they want to leave a legacy. And if I'm working with the organization, they're wanting to step up into the next level. So when I work with the corporate clients, it's they're wanting to step up into the next level of their leadership. And often they need some emotional intelligence coaching. But whatever setting they're in, it's usually they're wanting to take the next level up, have more impact in the world, and then deal with, lack of work life balance, workaholism, imposter syndrome, all of the big mindset stuff underneath. And as part of that, I really do a lot of life purpose impact work as well. So that's my person. Is that clear? Is that who they are?
Yeah, yeah, that's clear. That's very clear. And I think the imposter syndrome is something that I think a lot of people listening will relate to. So, how would you summarize the work that you do on imposter syndrome and how people can get over it?
Yeah, I look for nearly every single one of my clients, self-belief and or imposter syndrome. It's a piece of work to be done. And it is the big one that if it's a big mindset piece. If you shift that, you can do anything. So it's
Mhm.
hugely important. And the way I work with that is I really, firstly get them to identify it. So we identify that self imposter voice or that lack of self belief voice. We do various work around separating that out. So the first piece is getting really conscious and clear about that, separating it out, and then replacing that gently and with compassion with a much more an adult voice, because often the self-imposter, lack of self-belief, it's a child part of you, it's an old wounded unmet need part of you. And then, I mean, actually, the three best questions I get people to work with, and I've done this myself, Rob, because it's one of my issues, it's to really start checking in and asking those adult sense check questions, such as, are you really unable to do that? Are you sure you have no experience? Haven't you actually done something like this before? It's really questioning that self imposter voice because it can get a real grip on you and really hold you back in your life.
Yeah. Knowing your work as well as I do, I think part of that comes into celebrating successes, doesn't it? And
Mm.
and factoring those in because it can be so often to just move on to the next thing, quickly move on, and not celebrate success.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh God, you've been reading my book, Rob.
We'll
I
come
have a
on to
whole
that.
chapter. Yeah, I have a whole chapter on this. Yeah, really acknowledging who you are right here, right now, the qualities and skills you have right here, right now. Because when you have imposter syndrome, you dismiss all of the facts and all of the evidence that actually will tell you you've done this before. You already got this kind of experience. Look at what you've done, X, Y, Z. When you have something like imposter syndrome, you dismiss all of that and you go to this real place of sheer terror. So, the celebration, the acknowledgement of your qualities and skills and achievements is hugely, hugely important. And it's something I actually have to train clients in all the time because in our British civilization, we do not have a culture of this. And it's not taught in schools. And actually, it's seen as quite a shameful thing. As children, we're told messages such as, oh, you've got such a big head, don't get too big for your boots, or you're such a show off.
Yep.
All of those kind of phrases, they go in. And as children, we want to belong and be loved. And so we push all that stuff down.
Yeah, they go in and stay in, don't they? And I think
We
it's,
do.
even in the workplace, it's so easy to just move on. As a project manager, I've lost count of the amount of times that we've completed a project, moved on to the next one. Literally Friday, Monday. You may have some celebratory drinks or some pizzas or something like that, but that's as far as it goes. And then it's move on to the next project, move on to the next project.
Yeah, and it's in that space in Gestalt organizational therapy, it's a mouthful. They call that the fertile void
Yeah.
because it's in that space. If you just sit in that and really, like you say, acknowledge, celebrate, and just be with it, all sorts of creative ideas and learnings come up. So it's such a shame.
Fortunately, we have people like you working on this to help give people that clarity and to help them move forwards. So you touched on your book. So it's
Mm.
I love your book. I think it's wonderful,
Oh.
and I'd like you to, if you don't mind, share a little bit about it, what the inspiration was behind it, what it's about, and indeed what it's done for your business.
Yeah, so my book, Change Your Life in Five, and it's practical steps to making meaningful changes in your life. And how this came about is it's a leadership quest, it's known as actually. I did a leadership program of a year about six years ago, really big piece of self-development. And as part of that, I was determined to bring all of the coaching tools, all the stuff I was learning to the mainstream. So I'm really passionate about getting, all of this information, this self-development work just out into the mainstream so that anyone can pick that up and find out all of this fabulous stuff, which will have them living from a place of conscious choice. So that conscious choice just basically means, they're not being run by the conditioned rules they were told as children, what you can
Yeah.
do, what you can't do, what you should do. That's what it's about. And that's what I wanted to do. And I just cracked on and did that. So I Googled, how to write a self help book. And I basically just did it, 30 minutes on my laptops most mornings. And I was about to self publish actually when a publisher got in contact with me and she'd seen my Change Your Life in Five video blogs, and she got it, and she liked it, and she wanted to take me to London Book Fair, which she did, and that's how I got the deal.
Oh, that's amazing. So, and that shows the value in publishing some of the other work that you do as well. Because if you hadn't published those vlogs, then the opportunity wouldn't have come up to get the publishing deal.
Yeah. And again, the videos were just, I just want to get this stuff out, all these little nuggets of things. I just want to get them out into the mainstream, so people can just watch a 2-minute video and get a piece of information. And again, just for that information so they can start living from a place of conscious choice. That's it.
Absolutely. So it's called Change Your Life in Five. What are the 5 steps within the book?
Oh, well, I know you like this because I know you especially like the clarity piece.
I do.
Uh, so the first, yeah, the first. Oh, actually, I just pulled my book off the shelf. You can't see me, but it's a one-liner of each. So the first chapter is clarify. So that's about clarifying what's really important to you. Your values and your purpose. Remember that. Your why is important to you. The second chapter is conquer. So this is about conquering those self-sabotaging voices, those fears and those doubts, and connecting you with a wiser voice that's already within you. So it's giving you access to that old wise voice. Choose, and that's about creating new perspectives, new ways of thinking, behaving, creating those new neural pathways in your brains. You can teach an old dog new tricks. Even at my age, you can celebrate, and that is the one you were talking about. So that's celebrating your achievements, your qualities, and your skills, and how to beat imposter syndrome. So there's a great little section there on imposter syndrome. And that was a new chapter that I completely wrote into the book. And then commit, which is about putting yourself first, self-care, reducing stress and anxiety. And that within that section, I talk about morning routines, how to set them out. I share my own because I'm a huge advocate of those, and mindfulness.
That's fabulous. It really is. And I think for anybody that's thinking about doing something different with their life, whether that is starting a business, as most of this audience are, of course, but I think it's so useful. And to be able to take that step back and really think about the why, I think is so important. And as we move forwards through this decade and beyond, these things and having that focus on yourself as an individual and where you fit into the bigger picture, to the tapestry of the everything else that's going on around it. So no, I think that's wonderful, Sue. I really do.
Thank you.
So you live in London, like I do, of course, and clearly with COVID, there's a big audience on our doorstep, but geography's almost become irrelevant over the last year. So, how has your business changed since COVID, effectively?
Yeah, well, I'm completely all remote working, both myself, but also my clients. So I am coaching all of my clients either through Zoom or Teams or Google. In terms of the back end and products and website and all of that, I did update in line. I really did change my messaging, really responded to what was going on out there. And just initially, in the initial days, the initial couple of months, I just made a decision to just be more visible and just give value. I think that was what happened for me. And that was, in response to my own situation and those that I was hearing with my clients about what they were dealing with. So I just started doing lives and just from my own experience, giving tips again, just tips, tools that I knew, especially around how to deal and manage with anxiety and fear.
Yep. And that was
Um,
how we first came across you, of course. So my wife she attended a webinar that was about doing video conferences effectively. So when you spoke about all those great things about getting the lighting right, all the background behind you, all of that kind of stuff. And we loved it. I just happened to be in the room at the time, and it
oh yeah,
piqued
I
my
remember,
interest.
yeah.
Yeah,
She said,
piqued my interest, and I thought, well, I need to listen to this. And yeah, that must have been in about April, March, April time, and
"Oh, was
and
it?"
and clearly but that was right at the start. That was right at the time when people were first starting to move online and indeed to think about putting their video on, because so often people do conference calls but wouldn't necessarily put the video on. But when you don't see your colleagues from 1 month to the next, suddenly the video component of those calls became so much more important. So
Yeah.
at the time, that was so key, and I could absolutely see why you decided to do that webinar at that time. So we could talk all day, but but I'd love. There's four questions I ask every guest at the end of the show. So I'd love to know what your best piece of advice is for somebody who's thinking about starting their own business.
Yeah. Absolutely number one is get a complete handle on what your fears, your limiting beliefs, and any self-belief issues you have are. Get a handle on that. Do some work on that. It will be the best investment you ever make. And I'm not saying come and coach with me necessarily, but I'm saying do some work, whether that's with a therapist, a counselor, a coach, courses. Focus on that first, because that is the biggest thing that will make or break you.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I think it really is key. It's having that starting point and knowing why you've got to where you are and how you can move forwards. I think it's so vital. So no, really great point. And what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started your business?
The importance of self-care and the effects of workaholism.
Yeah,
Uh,
I laugh, but it's so true. And you know, yeah, I think it's as your own boss, it can be so hard not to switch off. I think.
yeah, and I think as your own boss, it's any kind of workaholism tendencies, not being able to say no, they're all exacerbated by being your own boss, because there's no one else to stop you. And I work with clients who often blame the culture, the system they're working in, but when they leave to go and work in another culture, oh, surprise, it's still there. And it's our internal pressures that we put on ourselves and our internal resistance to taking care of ourselves. Again, that's the key.
Yeah, no, it's really useful advice. The third question is, what's the best resource you'd recommend? So, be it a book, a podcast, a website, a magazine article, anything you've come across that would be really useful.
Well, I've written down your book, Rob, and I mean that.
Thank you.
I have. I have. I do, because that's why we're speaking on here, because what I believe in is very aligned with what you're doing in the book. And I think your process that you've set out is hugely valuable. So it is looking at the deeper things, but also then looking at the process parts.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm keeping it in.
thank you. I can't argue with that.
No
I'm a little
arguing
bit.
it, no.
a little bit embarrassed, but it's but no, thank you. And I say I wrote the book for this purpose. So yeah, I'm glad you see value in it, and I'm delighted to have you in it as a contributor as well. So it's yeah, I'm not too sure what to say. I'm blushing. I'm blushing here.
Receive, receive, and celebrate.
Thank you so much. And finally, on the questions, then, is there a guest you'd recommend to come on a future episode of the show?
Absolutely. Sophie Brown, who is actually a friend of mine, but she's a former CFO and she advises entrepreneurs on financing, so the finances that will support their business and also funding. And she has actually made me love spreadsheets and see the value of spreadsheets. And I hate spreadsheets and detail. I hated all that stuff. But in
Yeah,
terms of running your own business, you need to be on top of your finances. That's an essential. And she is fantastic, not just that stuff, but also she's very good. She actually coaches me. She's very good at holding you in that because there's a lot of shame and we've all got money mindset issues, all sorts of stuff. She's very good at the holding of the person in that process. She's fabulous.
fantastic. Well, I'd love an introduction and to get her on a
Mhm.
future episode of the show. That's
Yeah,
great. Thank you so much.
she's great.
And just finally, then, before we finish, if people want to know more about you and to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
It's all on my website, suebelton.com.
Brilliant, nice and slick. Okay, well, thank you so much. It's been great fun talking with you today, and you've provided a huge amount of value. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I certainly did, and I love how direct and to the point Sue is. Some of the issues she raises are just behind our consciousness on a daily basis, and taking that step back and ensuring you live from conscious choice, as Sue puts it, can make all the difference as to whether you live a happy, successful, and satisfied life, or indeed otherwise. As you heard, I was quite humbled when Sue referenced my book, Project Future 6 Steps to Success as Your Own Boss, as her recommended resource. I wasn't expecting that at all, but I have learned to embrace it. And 7 weeks after the book was published, it's been an honour to receive such feedback, including from someone recently who's had their business for over 20 years and still got value from the book. So, whether you're at the very start of your journey or at a more advanced stage, do give it a read. Equally, I can vouch for Sue's book, Change Your Life in 5. It's incredibly powerful and will help you to clarify, conquer, choose, celebrate, and commit in order to significantly change your path. On next week's episode, I speak with the brilliant Grant Asplund on swinging for the fence. So please subscribe to get notified of this on Tuesday morning. It's another conversation where I had no idea what to expect, and it's not to be missed. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep launching and building those amazing businesses that give you satisfaction and balance.